The most dangerous trap is the one that exposes the person who designed it. At 8:43 on a rain-soaked Monday morning, Billionaire CEO Nathaniel Cross stood behind the tinted glass of his 47th floor Manhattan office, watching a young black delivery woman enter the executive lobby below. At 44, Nathaniel had built Crosswell Technologies into a multi-billion-dollar empire by trusting evidence, numbers, and controlled outcomes. Tall, white, sharply dressed in charcoal, he carried himself with the quiet authority of a man accustomed to predicting what people would do before they did it. Lately, however, someone had been stealing from him. 3 confidential prototypes had disappeared during outside deliveries, and security had found one recurring detail. Each loss occurred while courier personnel were inside the building. Her name is Lena Brooks, Security Director Marcus Hale said. 29. 8 months with Metro Swift. No complaints. Nathaniel watched the monitor as Lena stepped from the elevator wearing a navy courier jacket damp from the rain. Her deep brown skin caught the lobby's warm light. Natural curls gathered neatly behind her head. She carried 2 packages and moved with the focused confidence of someone who had no time to impress strangers. Everything ready? Nathaniel asked. Marcus nodded. On a marble table near reception sat an intentionally unsealed black case. Inside lay a prototype watch worth $50,000, an envelope containing cash, and a confidential folder marked executive only. Hidden cameras recorded every angle. Lena scanned her deliveries. Then she noticed the case. She stopped. Nathaniel leaned closer to the screen. Lena looked around the empty reception area and approached the table. Her hand moved toward the money. Marcus smiled faintly. There. But Lena never touched it. Instead, she removed her phone, photographed the unsecured contents, pulled a tamper-evident strip from her courier bag, and sealed the case. Nathaniel's expression shifted. Then Lena picked it up and walked toward the service corridor. She's taking it, Marcus said. Nathaniel followed her through another camera. Lena entered the staff break room, where an elderly maintenance worker sat beside a vending machine, anxiously searching his pockets. Walter, she asked, everything okay? The man sighed. Lost the cash for my wife's prescription. Lena hesitated, opened her own wallet, and counted out nearly everything inside. Take this. No, Lena. Medicine first. Pay me back, whenever. Nathaniel stared at the monitor. She had protected $50,000 belonging to a billionaire, then quietly given away the little money that belonged to her. Minutes later, he intercepted her near the elevator. Ms. Brooks. Lena turned. Nathaniel held out his hand for the sealed case. You knew this wasn't yours. That's why I secured it. And Walter's money? Her gaze sharpened. That was mine. I didn't need permission to help someone. Nathaniel glanced toward the camera. Lena followed his eyes. Understanding arrived instantly. You set this up. He remained silent. You thought I'd steal. I needed to know whether someone wearing a delivery jacket could be trusted around expensive things. Her voice stayed calm, making the accusation heavier. Nathaniel had no answer. Lena placed the case into his hands. Did I pass? Yes. She shook her head. Then maybe you tested the wrong person. She turned toward the elevator. Nathaniel looked down at the case and froze. Lena had attached a handwritten security label across the latch. The distinctive lettering was unmistakable. He had seen that handwriting 20 years earlier on the final note left by Vivian Brooks, the black woman who had once saved his life before disappearing without explanation. Nathaniel looked sharply toward Lena. Wait. The elevator doors began closing. What was your mother's name? Lena stared at him through the narrowing gap. Vivian. Nathaniel's fingers began to tremble. And for the first time that morning, the billionaire realized the trap he had set might have just reopened the greatest secret of his life. Where did you learn to write like that? Nathaniel's question stopped Lena just as the elevator doors began to close. She pressed the button and looked back at him, one hand gripping the strap of her navy courier bag. Write like what? Nathaniel raised the security label she had attached to the black case. The letters were ordinary to anyone else. To him, they were a ghost. The narrow B, the unusual curve of the S, the final stroke leaning slightly left. 20 years earlier, he had received a farewell note written exactly that way. Your handwriting, he said. Lena frowned. My mother taught me. Nathaniel's pulse changed. Vivian Brooks? Her expression immediately sharpened. How do you know her name? He stared at Lena more carefully now. the steady dark eyes, the quiet confidence, the way she refused to shrink simply because the man questioning her owned the building. Vivian had looked at him that way once. Before Croswell. Before the billions. Before everything disappeared. I knew your mother. Lena released the elevator button. The doors opened again. Knew her how? Nathaniel glanced toward the executive corridor. Could we speak somewhere private? I'm working. 10 minutes. 5. They entered a small conference room with glass walls overlooking Manhattan. Nathaniel deliberately left the door open. Lena remained standing. 20 years ago, he began, your mother saved my life. Her skepticism softened slightly. Nathaniel told her about the icy road outside Philadelphia. His car had skidded through a barrier. Vivian, returning from a hospital shift, found him before anyone else. She stayed until help arrived, then visited during his recovery. We became close, Nathaniel said. Very close. Lena folded her arms. Mom never mentioned you. One morning she disappeared. His voice lowered. She left me one note. Maybe she had a reason. I'm beginning to think she did. Nathaniel removed his phone and showed Lena a photograph of the faded letter he had kept locked away. She read it silently. Her eyes stopped at the signature. That's Mom's handwriting. I know. Then why are you looking at me like I'm supposed to explain it? The question carried enough edge to remind him of the trap upstairs. You're right. You don't owe me an explanation. Lena studied him, surprised by the answer. Is she well? Nathaniel asked. Her face changed. She died 3 years ago. The billionaire's composure broke for half a second. I'm sorry. Lena nodded. Cancer. She fought it for 2 years. Nathaniel looked toward the window, absorbing the fact that Vivian had lived an entire life while he remained trapped inside a 20-year-old goodbye. Did she ever talk about Philadelphia? Once. What did she say? Lena hesitated. That Philadelphia taught her powerful families could close doors ordinary people couldn't reopen. Nathaniel went still. 20 years ago, he had not been powerful. But Arthur Cross had been. His father had controlled the family money, Nathaniel's early career, and almost every relationship surrounding him. That afternoon, Nathaniel returned to his office and unlocked the drawer containing Vivian's original note. He unfolded it beneath his desk lamp. Something about Lena's words bothered him. He examined the paper more closely and noticed faint impressions beneath the final paragraph, marks left by another sheet written above it. Nathaniel shaded the page gently with the side of a pencil. Slowly, hidden words emerged. His fingers stopped. Your father knows about the baby. Nathaniel stared at the sentence, unable to breathe. Then he looked through the glass toward the elevator where Lena had disappeared. The trap he had set to expose a thief had just uncovered a secret his own family had buried for 20 years. Your father knows about the baby. Nathaniel read the hidden sentence until the words stopped looking like handwriting and became an accusation. 20 years of memory shifted beneath him. Vivian had not simply disappeared. She had been pregnant, frightened, and somehow dealing with Arthur Cross without Nathaniel knowing any of it. By sunset, Nathaniel was driving toward Croswell Manor, the stone estate where his father had spent decades controlling people with the quiet confidence of a man who believed money could arrange reality. Arthur had been dead for 5 years, but his study remained untouched. Nathaniel entered alone, opened the old mahogany desk, and searched until he found a locked compartment behind the bottom drawer. Inside sat a thin folder marked VB. His hands tightened. The first document was addressed to Vivian Brooks. The Cross family is prepared to provide financial assistance in exchange for your permanent separation from Nathaniel Cross. Nathaniel felt his stomach turn. Beneath it was Vivian's handwritten reply. Keep your money. Nathaniel deserves to know the truth, and my child will never become the price of your approval. Nathaniel lowered himself into his father's chair. Vivian had refused him. She had fought. And Nathaniel had spent 20 years believing she simply walked away. Another document contained photographs taken by a private investigator. Vivian leaving a medical clinic. Vivian entering her apartment. Vivian standing outside Croswell Manor with one protective hand over her stomach. Then Nathaniel found a birth certificate. Emily Vivian Brooks. His eyes moved to the date. 20 years earlier. His daughter. Not Lena. Nathaniel's breath escaped slowly. Lena was 29, which meant Vivian had raised her before Nathaniel ever entered their lives. Emily was the baby hidden from him. The following morning, Nathaniel waited outside Metro Swift's Manhattan Dispatch Center. Lena emerged carrying her delivery bag and immediately frowned. Do billionaires usually wait outside courier stations? Only when they owe someone the truth. He handed her copies of the documents. Lena read them silently. Her expression changed when she reached Emily's birth certificate. You found out. Nathaniel stared at her. You knew about Emily? She was my little sister. The words landed softly, but Nathaniel felt them everywhere. Where is she? Lena lowered the papers. Pain entered her eyes. She died when she was 6 months old. Nathaniel became completely still. Traffic moved behind him. Horns sounded. People passed. None of it seemed real. How? She was born with a serious heart condition. Lena's voice remained gentle. Mom worked extra hospital shifts and took her to specialists. She did everything she could. Nathaniel looked away, fighting for control. And I wasn't there. You didn't know. Your mother tried to tell me. Lena did not argue. That mercy hurt more than blame. Nathaniel swallowed. Why didn't Vivian contact me after Emily died? Lena studied him for a long moment. Maybe she did. She opened her courier bag and removed an old envelope protected inside a clear sleeve. After you mentioned Mom yesterday, I searched through one of her boxes. Nathaniel recognized his name immediately. The envelope was addressed to him in Vivian's handwriting. Across the front, stamped in red, were the words "Return to sender." There are more, Lena said quietly. 9 letters. All returned. Nathaniel's face hardened. My father. Lena handed him the oldest envelope. Read this one first. Nathaniel broke the seal with trembling fingers. Inside was a photograph of Vivian holding newborn Emily. Behind it was a letter. Nathaniel, your father told me you chose your future over us. I refused to believe him, so I kept writing. If this reaches you, please know I never chose to disappear. Nathaniel closed his eyes. Then something slipped from behind the photograph. A hospital visitor record from 3 days before Emily died. One name appeared beneath Vivian's. Arthur Cross. Nathaniel stared at his father's signature. Arthur had known Emily was sick. He had visited Nathaniel's daughter while keeping her existence secret from him. Lena saw his expression. What is it? Nathaniel turned the page toward her. For the first time, Lena looked genuinely stunned. And Nathaniel understood that the secret was no longer simply why Vivian had disappeared. The darker question was why Arthur Cross had stood beside his dying granddaughter and still chosen silence. He stood beside my daughter while she was dying and never told me she existed. Nathaniel's voice sounded unfamiliar inside Arthur Cross's study. Lena stood across the mahogany desk, holding the hospital visitor record bearing Arthur's signature. For several seconds, neither moved. Anger would have been easier. Anger could be directed somewhere. But Arthur was dead, Emily was gone, and Vivian had carried a grief Nathaniel had never even known belonged partly to him. There has to be more, Lena said quietly. Nathaniel reopened the V.B. folder. Beneath the investigator reports and returned correspondence, he found a sealed envelope marked Emily. Inside were hospital invoices, specialist reports, and payment receipts. Every remaining balance had been paid by Arthur Cross 3 days before Emily died. Nathaniel stared at the figures. He paid everything. Lena's expression remained still. That doesn't erase what he did. No, Nathaniel looked at the visitor record. It means he knew exactly how serious it was. A handwritten note rested beneath the receipts. Vivian, I told you Nathaniel had chosen his future because I believed I could make that lie become true. I thought if enough time passed, both of you would accept the lives I selected for you. Emily's illness showed me the cost of my arrogance. Nathaniel stopped reading. His father had not misunderstood. He had engineered the separation. Lena took the page and continued silently. Her eyes hardened. He says Mom asked him to bring you to the hospital. Nathaniel's face lost color. What? Lena handed him the letter. She begged me to tell you before Emily's surgery. I refused because admitting the truth meant admitting everything I had done. When I finally returned, Emily was gone. Nathaniel lowered himself into the chair. He imagined Vivian beneath hospital lights, waiting for a doorway that never opened. He imagined a daughter whose tiny hand he had never held. She thought I chose not to come. Lena looked at him with quiet compassion. For a while, probably. And afterward, Mom eventually understood your father had manipulated both of you. How? Lena shook her head. She never told me. Nathaniel turned another page. A property deed appeared beneath Arthur's confession. The address stopped him immediately. For 17, Mercer Avenue, Brooklyn. Crosswell Technologies' original headquarters. Why is this here? Attached was a transfer agreement naming Vivian Brooks. Lena leaned closer. My mother owned that building. Nathaniel remembered the warehouse before Crosswell had a logo, employees, or investors. Vivian had taken him there one evening when he was 23. The property belonged to her family, she had said. Empty space, cheap electricity, a place where his impossible ideas could make noise without neighbors complaining. Nathaniel had built his first working prototype there. She gave me my beginning, he whispered. The next document made the truth worse. Vivian had granted Nathaniel use of the warehouse for $1 per year. After she disappeared, Arthur transferred the property into a cross-holding company without completing the ownership change legally. Nathaniel stared at his father's signature. Crosswell was born in a building your mother never actually gave us. Lena looked around Arthur's luxurious study. So while he was telling Mom she didn't belong in your future, he was building part of that future on something that belonged to her. Nathaniel had no defense. I'll return it. Lena immediately met his eyes. Don't make decisions for me because you feel guilty. It belongs to your family. Then establish that properly. No gifts. No billionaire rescue. Her voice remained calm. Truth first. Nathaniel nodded. She was right again. 3 days later, independent counsel confirmed the deed. Vivian had remained the lawful owner until her death. Under her will, the Brooklyn warehouse passed to Lena. Estimated value, nearly $30 million. Nathaniel expected shock when he told her. Instead, Lena asked one question. Is the old workbench still there? He blinked. I think so. Then take me there. That afternoon, they entered the dusty warehouse together. Lena found Vivian's initials carved beneath the workbench beside Nathaniel's. NC plus VB. She touched them gently. Mom wanted to open a training center someday. Childcare, technology classes, job skills. Nathaniel looked around the enormous building his empire had once called home. Then we build it. Lena turned toward him. We. He understood the correction immediately. You decide. I help. For the first time, she smiled. Now you're learning. And standing inside the building Vivian had quietly provided before Nathaniel Cross became important. The billionaire finally understood how much of his success had begun with a woman his family had tried to erase. $30 million doesn't change what this place was supposed to become. Lena stood in the center of the old Brooklyn warehouse, the legal confirmation of ownership still folded in her hand. Afternoon sunlight poured through dusty industrial windows, illuminating the workbench where Nathaniel had built his first prototype decades earlier. He watched her quietly. The building was worth enough to transform her life overnight. She could sell it, invest the money, leave delivery work behind forever. Yet Lena seemed interested in none of those possibilities. You're certain you don't want time to think? Nathaniel asked. I have thought about it. For 20 minutes. Some decisions take 20 years. Some take 20 minutes. She looked around the warehouse. Mom wanted a training center here. That's what I want too. Nathaniel nodded. Then Crosswell will finance everything. Lena immediately turned toward him. No, he blinked. No, you're doing it again. Doing what? Deciding that because you have money, the fastest solution must be the right one. Nathaniel almost defended himself, then stopped. What would be the right one? Listen first. Lena walked toward the windows. Talk to people who would actually use this place. Delivery workers, single parents, hospital aides, people trying to learn new skills while working full-time. She faced him. Don't build something for them before asking them what they need. Nathaniel absorbed the correction. All right. Her eyebrows lifted. That easy. I'm developing a disturbing habit of discovering you're right. A reluctant smile touched her face. That sounds expensive. Apparently, everything involving your family is. The joke faded when Nathaniel noticed the carved initials beneath the workbench. N.C. plus V.B. He ran his fingers over them. Your mother brought me here before anyone believed Crosswell could exist. Lena remained beside him. Tell me about her. Nathaniel looked surprised. You knew her better than I did. I knew her as my mother. You knew someone she was before me. Nathaniel smiled faintly. She challenged everything I said. That sounds familiar. She believed technology mattered only if ordinary people could benefit from it. I thought success came first and responsibility later. His gaze moved across the warehouse. Vivian thought I had the order backward. Lena became quiet. She wanted this center because she spent years watching people get trapped between work and opportunity. Nathaniel nodded. Then we build around that. We? She asked. He corrected himself. You lead. I show up. Lena studied him, satisfied. 3 weeks later, the first community meeting filled the warehouse with folding chairs and voices. Nathaniel sat in the back without assistance. He listened as working mothers requested evening classes and childcare. Couriers asked for logistics certifications. Older workers wanted basic technology training without being embarrassed for starting late. Lena wrote everything down. Nathaniel did too. Afterward, they remained alone beneath temporary construction lights. You barely spoke, Lena said. You told me to listen. And you actually did. Try not to sound shocked. Before Lena could answer, Nathaniel's attorney called. We found something in Vivian's estate documents, she said. A handwritten instruction attached to the property file. Nathaniel put the call on speaker. What does it say? A scanned page arrived moments later. Lena opened it. Vivian's handwriting filled the screen. If Lena keeps the building, Nathaniel may help, but do not let him solve everything with money. Make him work beside the people this place serves. Make him remember how his own beginning was possible because someone gave him room before he could repay them. Nathaniel stared silently at the words. Lena slowly looked toward him. Your mother planned this remarkably well. She usually did. Then Lena pointed toward a stack of folding chairs waiting to be carried into storage. Well, billionaire. She said work beside the people. Nathaniel removed his jacket. You've been waiting to say that. Absolutely. He lifted the first stack. Lena took another. And inside the warehouse where Vivian Brooks had once made room for Nathaniel's future, he finally began learning that repayment was not about returning a building or writing a check. It was about becoming the kind of man who understood why the door had been opened for him in the first place. Your mother didn't want me to pay for redemption. She wanted me to practice it. Nathaniel stood among stacked folding chairs inside the Brooklyn warehouse, his expensive white shirt rolled to his elbows and his charcoal jacket abandoned across Vivian's old workbench. Lena carried another stack past him. That sounds less convenient than writing a check. Significantly. Good. 6 weeks had passed since Vivian's instructions were discovered, and Nathaniel had followed them with uncomfortable precision. Twice each week, he left Croswell Tower without assistance and came to Brooklyn. He attended community meetings. He carried equipment. He listened while working parents explained why traditional training programs failed them. Most importantly, he stopped entering every room believing his resources automatically gave him the best answer. Lena noticed the change, but she never praised him for it. Nathaniel was beginning to understand that she shouldn't have to. One afternoon, the center's architect presented plans showing classrooms, computer labs, offices, and a childcare room tucked into the rear of the building. Lena studied the drawings. Why is childcare back there? It maximizes classroom space, the architect explained. Move it here. Lena pointed toward the largest room overlooking the courtyard. That's premium space, he replied. Exactly. Nathaniel looked at the plan, then at Lena. Vivian had spent years watching working mothers receive whatever opportunities remained after everyone else had been accommodated. Give childcare the windows, Nathaniel said. The architect hesitated. Mr. Cross, that changes the entire layout. Then change it. Lena glanced at him. Careful. That almost sounded like you were listening. Nathaniel smiled. Don't ruin the moment. But the center was not the only thing changing. Croswell's internal investigation finally identified the person behind the missing prototypes, Senior Operations Manager Douglas Vane. He had deliberately removed devices during delivery windows, knowing suspicion would fall on outside couriers. Nathaniel stared at the report in disbelief. He had placed Lena under surveillance while the real thief carried an executive access card. The next morning, Nathaniel called every contracted courier company servicing Croswell. Then he stood before hundreds of employees in the corporate auditorium. Lena watched from the back. When valuable property disappeared, Nathaniel began. I looked first toward people with the least institutional power. The room became silent. That assumption was wrong. The theft came from inside our executive structure. He paused. I owe every courier subjected to suspicion an apology. Afterward, Lena found him beside the marble table where he had set the original trap. You said it publicly. It needed to be public. Most CEOs would have blamed security. A few months ago, I might have. Lena studied him. And now? Nathaniel looked toward the service elevators. Now I understand that the easiest person to suspect is often simply the person with the least power to object. Her expression softened. Mom would have liked that answer. The words affected him more than any boardroom approval ever had. That evening, they returned to Brooklyn. Construction crews had uncovered the original brick walls, and golden sunset filled the unfinished rooms. Nathaniel stopped beside Vivian's workbench. I keep wondering whether she ever forgave me. Lena remained quiet. For what? For not finding her. You searched. Not hard enough. Lena shook her head. Don't rewrite the past just so you can punish yourself inside it. Nathaniel looked at her. You really are her daughter. I've been telling you that. Before he could respond, a contractor called from behind the workbench. Ms. Brooks, we found something inside the wall. He handed Lena a small metal box covered in dust. Vivian Brooks was written across the lid. Lena opened it carefully. Inside lay photographs, an old brass key, and a sealed envelope. Nathaniel recognized Vivian's handwriting immediately. The message on the front was simple. For Lena, when Nathaniel finally learns to listen. Lena slowly looked at him. Nathaniel exhaled. Your mother's timing remains terrifying. Lena almost smiled. Then she opened the envelope, and the first sentence erased the humor from both their faces. If Nathaniel has finally learned to listen, then tell him this. Guilt is not the same thing as love. Lena stopped reading. The unfinished training center fell silent around them, illuminated by the last amber light of evening. Nathaniel stared at Vivian's handwriting on the letter. Even after death, she refused to offer him easy forgiveness. Lena continued. Nathaniel, you will want to repair everything. You always did. But Emily cannot be returned to us, and the years between us cannot be rebuilt. Do not turn what happened into a punishment you carry forever. Build something useful instead. Nathaniel lowered his eyes. For months, he had imagined redemption as a debt large enough to consume the rest of his life. Vivian was asking for something harder. Purpose without self-punishment. There's more, Lena whispered. Vivian described the center she had once imagined. Technology training for working adults, childcare for parents, practical education for people overlooked by traditional systems. Then came a sentence addressed directly to Lena. Baby girl, if you are reading this, the building is yours. But ownership is not the same as purpose. You decide what it becomes. Not me. Not Nathaniel. You. Lena's eyes filled. Nathaniel stepped back, allowing her the privacy of the moment even though they stood only feet apart. She always did that, Lena said softly. Did what? Gave advice and freedom in the same sentence. Nathaniel smiled faintly. That sounds like her. The final page contained a request. Vivian wanted the center's first scholarship created in Emily's name, not as a memorial to tragedy, but as an opportunity for someone whose future was still waiting. Lena looked at Nathaniel. The Emily Brooks Scholarship. He nodded. If that's what you want. What we want. The correction surprised him. Lena folded the letter carefully. She was your daughter too. Nathaniel looked away, emotion tightening his face. I never got to be her father. No, Lena's answer was gentle but honest. But you can honor her now. 3 months later, the Vivian Brooks Opportunity Center opened its doors. There were no celebrities, champagne towers, or giant photographs of Nathaniel presenting checks. The brightest room belonged to childcare. Computer labs filled the East Wing. Evening classrooms remained open for workers finishing late shifts. Walter, the maintenance employee Lena had helped on the morning of Nathaniel's trap, stood near the entrance wearing his best jacket. Nathaniel approached him. How is your wife? Walter smiled. Better. Still bossing me around. Good. Walter studied him. You're different from the man who used to walk past us in the lobby. Nathaniel glanced toward Lena. I started noticing who was actually carrying the building. During the opening ceremony, Lena stood before the crowd. This center began long before construction, she said. It began when my mother gave someone space to build a future before he had money, influence, or certainty. Nathaniel lowered his head. Today, we return that idea to everyone who walks through these doors. She announced the Emily Brooks Scholarship. Nathaniel's composure nearly broke when the first recipient, a working mother studying software support, stepped forward holding her young daughter's hand. Later, after the building emptied, Nathaniel and Lena sat on Vivian's old workbench. Did I pass? He asked. Lena frowned. Pass what? Her test. Lena smiled. You still think everything has a score. Occupational damage. She looked around the center. Maybe there was never a test. Nathaniel considered that. Then what was all this? Lena looked toward Vivian and Emily's photographs hanging together near the entrance. A choice. Between what? Being powerful enough to control what happens next, she turned toward him, and being humble enough to deserve a place in it. Nathaniel said nothing. This time, Lena smiled. See? You finally learned to listen. Maybe there was never a test. Lena's words stayed with Nathaniel long after the opening ceremony ended. 6 months later, the Vivian Brooks Opportunity Center no longer smelled like fresh paint. It smelled like coffee, children's crayons, printer paper, and ordinary life. The childcare room remained bright with afternoon sunlight. Evening classes filled faster than expected. Delivery workers studied logistics management beside hospital aides learning bookkeeping, while parents who once believed education had passed them by sat behind computers and began again. Nathaniel visited every Thursday. Not for photographs, not for board reports. He carried boxes, attended student meetings, and occasionally repaired equipment badly enough that Lena quietly called a technician afterward. You know, she said one evening, watching him struggle with a projector cable, being a technology billionaire should make this less embarrassing. I specialize in strategy. That cable specializes in winning. Nathaniel smiled. Their relationship had settled into something neither needed to define. Lena challenged him. Nathaniel listened. Sometimes they argued. More often now they laughed. But the center had also changed Crosswell Technologies. After the prototype investigation exposed how easily suspicion had fallen on outside workers, Nathaniel ordered an independent review of contractor policies. Delivery personnel received stronger workplace protections. Regular contractors gained paid sick leave. Anonymous complaints could bypass management. Executives were required to spend time inside warehouse and service operations before receiving promotions. When one board member called the reforms unnecessarily expensive, Nathaniel answered with a sentence Vivian would have appreciated. So is ignoring people until the consequences become impossible to hide. Lena heard about it later. Not bad. Only not bad. Mom would have removed 4 words. Nathaniel laughed. Then his expression softened. I wish she could see this. Lena looked across the classroom where a young mother studied while her son colored beside her. Maybe this is how she does. That evening, Lena brought Nathaniel into the center's main hall. A new wall had been completed without his knowledge. At its center hung 2 photographs. Vivian Brooks stood in the old warehouse, smiling beside Nathaniel's first prototype. Beside her was baby Emily, resting peacefully in Vivian's arms. Beneath them were the words, "Some futures are built. Others are given room to begin." Nathaniel became completely still. The scholarship committee chose it, Lena explained. The first 5 Emily Brooks scholars start next month. He swallowed. 5. 5 people whose lives are still waiting to happen. Nathaniel looked at Emily's photograph. He had spent months grieving birthdays he never witnessed, words she never learned, a future that never arrived. But Vivian's letter had warned him not to turn grief into permanent punishment. For the first time, he understood what she meant. Remembering Emily did not require remaining broken. It required making room for someone else to continue. Thank you, he whispered. Lena shook her head. Don't thank me. Show up Thursday. I always do. Good answer. A week later, Nathaniel returned to Crosswell Tower and stopped beside the marble table where he had once placed the trap. The black case was gone, but he could still see it in memory. The watch, the cash, the confidential folder. He had believed wealth gave him the right to measure a stranger's character. Instead, Lena had exposed the poverty in his own assumptions. The elevator opened behind him. Lena stepped out carrying a delivery bag. Nathaniel stared. You still make deliveries? Sometimes. You own a $30 million building. And? Nothing. I've learned. She handed him a small package. For you. Inside was a framed copy of Vivian's original $1 warehouse agreement. Beneath Vivian's signature, Lena had added a handwritten line. Paid in full. When you learn to make room for others. Nathaniel looked up, speechless again. Lena smiled. Interesting. What? The first day we met, I left you without words. She turned toward the elevator. Apparently, some things never change. Nathaniel watched the doors close, then looked at Vivian's signature beside Lena's. Once, He had set a trap because he wanted proof that a delivery girl deserved his trust. Now he understood the truth that had taken him decades to learn. Dignity never needed his approval. It had been standing in front of him all along. Some people inherit wealth. Others inherit the courage to decide what wealth should mean. 1 year after Nathaniel Cross placed an open case on a marble table to test a delivery girl, he stood outside the Vivian Brooks Opportunity Center beneath a clear Brooklyn morning, watching families enter through doors that had once belonged only to his ambition. Lena stood beside him, wearing the same Navy courier jacket from the day they met. "You own other clothes," Nathaniel said. "This one keeps billionaires nervous." He smiled. Effective. Inside, the center was alive. Parents attended technology classes while children played in the sunlit childcare room. Former couriers studied logistics management. Hospital aides learned bookkeeping. The Emily Brooks Scholarship had already helped 5 working adults complete professional certifications without leaving their families financially vulnerable. Near the entrance hung Vivian's photograph beside baby Emily's. Nathaniel stopped there every Thursday. Grief still came, but differently now. He no longer treated it as a sentence. He treated it as a responsibility to remain present. Crosswell had changed too. Contractor protections were permanent. Executive promotions required time working alongside warehouse and service teams. The company's ethics office reported independently from senior leadership. Nathaniel even removed the tinted glass from his executive office. Lena had laughed when she saw it. Finally tired of secretly watching people. "I deserve that." "Absolutely." During the center's anniversary ceremony, Walter approached the microphone. His wife sat smiling in the front row. "A year ago," he said, "Lena gave me money for medicine when she didn't have much herself. She didn't know anybody important was watching." Lena lowered her eyes, embarrassed. Walter continued, "Turns out somebody important was watching. He just hadn't learned yet who the important person was." The room laughed. Nathaniel did too, though emotion tightened his throat. Lena stepped forward afterward. "My mother believed dignity should never depend on somebody powerful noticing you," she said. "This center exists because people deserve opportunity before anyone decides they are impressive enough to receive it." She looked toward Nathaniel. "And sometimes people with power deserve the opportunity to change too, if they're willing to do the work." Nathaniel nodded quietly. Later, after the crowd disappeared, they returned to Vivian's old workbench. The black case from Nathaniel's original trap rested there. Lena opened it. Inside were no bills, no prototype watch, no confidential documents. Instead, it held photographs of the center's first graduating class, handwritten thank you notes, and 5 copies of completed certification diplomas. "You changed the contents," Nathaniel said. "I changed what was valuable." He looked at her, speechless. Lena laughed softly. "Again, apparently you have a talent." She closed the case. "Do you remember what you wanted to discover that morning? Whether you could be trusted?" "Wrong question." Nathaniel nodded. "I know. What was the right one?" He looked around the building Vivian had once given him space to dream inside, then toward the classrooms, now giving that same space to strangers. "Whether I could be trusted with power." Lena smiled. "Better." Nathaniel reached beneath the workbench and pulled out 2 brooms. Lena stared at him. "Planning ahead?" "I was told showing up matters." They began cleaning together beneath the warm evening lights. No cameras, no reporters, no hidden test. Just a billionaire who had finally learned that responsibility could not be delegated, and a black woman whose dignity had never depended on his approval. Outside, the last sunlight reflected across the center's windows. Nathaniel had set a trap expecting Lena Brooks to reveal her character. Instead, her unexpected choice uncovered Vivian's forgotten sacrifice, Emily's hidden existence, Arthur Cross's deception, and the assumptions Nathaniel's wealth had allowed him to carry unquestioned. He had expected the delivery girl to prove whether she deserved his trust. In the end, Lena left him speechless by proving something far greater. Integrity was never about refusing what did not belong to you. It was about what you chose to give when you finally had every right to take.